guys, welcome back to the Do Not Listen to This podcast. Boom! Nailed it! Got both podcasts in this time. I'm here again. This is Harold, and I'm here with
Zach,
Olive,
Tyler.
And today we're going to be chatting a bit about looking to the past and nostalgia and kind of how things have changed even in our short lives. So Zach kind of want to jump in and take it away.
Something Harold said last podcast really sparked this. He was talking about his story about his friend who died overseas. He was talking about when that happened, he kind of snapped out of this immortality that every kind of youth and teenager has. And I was thinking about how so true that is. How all teens know that we probably shouldn't be like texting and driving and going really fast, but we do it anyways because we're immortal. We can't die. You guys feel that way? Can you guys die?
No.
I can't
I
die.
definitely, I don't die. I don't
die.
have death.
Nope.
I mean,
I don't have that.
I've
never had that.
No.
It's never happened to me. So.
Like when we're swinging and we're jumping off the top, we should be hitting the ground and breaking all of our legs.
Right.
No.
Exactly.
You just bounce.
Yeah, but no, I bounce. I can't die.
Exactly. We're spry. Well put together.
Yeah, I have rubber bones, actually.
Yeah, it's true. When do we start dying?
I would say, well,
When you
According
get
to
a job.
Cake, it's the moment you're born, right?
whoa.
Wait, is that nostalgia for me already? Because that was totally back when I was a teenager that song
Dude,
came out.
Isn't Cake playing at Higher
Cake?
Ground?
Yeah,
They
Cake's not Higher Ground. Cake's coming to
This is Shelburne
Farms.
Farms.
I can't wait.
Ben and Jerry's.
Cake's a great band. Check it out, all you folks out.
All you folks out there.
It's real deep. Real
Yeah.
love.
That's a fresh
but they
new
have
one.
that-
I haven't heard of them.
They have that the line in that song. It's like, as soon as you're born, you start dying. So you might as well
It's
have
true.
a good time.
That's true.
That's good.
I think it's probably like, I would say 24 probably.
24 is when
24. That's
You're in a-
young.
Yeah. I think that's when you're like, wait a minute. Yeah.
That's when
Because
you
that's
start
when-
realizing it.
Yeah, that's
That's
when
probably
you
around that
start
time.
The
That's
down
right.
slope.
25 is usually
That's-
like the average of when your brain starts developing.
Well, that's
right?
also when you start paying for your own health care.
It's 24.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like 23, 24.
Yeah, so
that's when your parents'
So-
health care plan
That's
ends.
when
Touche.
you get
Touche.
you get your teeth knocked out, and you're not like
Well, that isn't-
whatever.
Whatever. I'll just grow into. Oh wait.
Yeah, no.
That's not how it works.
Well, your teeth stop growing in when you're like 8 or something.
I still feel like if I wanted to, I could try hard enough
Yeah.
and grow another thing of teeth.
Yeah, Zach's actually just a shark.
I am. I have like 18 rows.
Yep.
I mean, I remember when I was like younger and doing crazy things, like just climbing up in trees and jumping out into a foot of snow or whatever, and not thinking to care about it.
I think it's great that you acknowledge that because I feel like adults will tell us like you can't do this and can't do that and can't do this, even though I'm almost positive my dad is like the biggest stoner and my mom is a party girl.
Yeah.
I have Grateful Dead posters all around my house. I tell you a little about my dad. My dad has an associate's in like cartoon animation. He went to art college.
It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of he's a big old deadhead. He owns a campground now, so I don't know how that really transfers, but
How did you end up snagging that campground? You just take
it was for sale for the longest time, and my dad was just like, you know what really sucks? Working at Price Chopper for like 30 years. You know what would rock? Owning a campground. So we bought a campground,
Yes.
which I think is so cool because I feel like teenagers get trapped in this idea. They'll be like, all right, out of high school, I need to go to college. I need something that can transfer to a job, and I need to stay in that job for the rest of my life. It needs to be $1 million.
Yeah, well, that's what so many people say now. Like, personally, I'm going to take like a year, maybe two, probably just one, off before I go to college after high school, just to make some money, settle down, take a break, because I don't think I'd be ready to jump back into a school setting again so early, first of all, but also, you know how many people go to college and they just have no idea, like they think they know what they want to do, but then they end up changing their mind, and they have to spend all this money over again. They got to get all new textbooks, they got to pay.
Yeah, that's an
another class,
expensive
another
choice
year.
to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And me, I'm like the first person in the history of my entire family that would be going to college, so
Really?
yeah, I don't want to, and people are always like, well, if you wait a year, you're not going to go back. And I'm like, well, if I want to, I will.
It's a
It's
pretty
not gonna just
popular
disappear.
decision to make, to do that. A gap year things, right?
Did you go straight into college, Harold?
I did. I went in. I basically went in and did full-time school with the little quotations around it, because it was the least amount I could do that would be considered full-time, so that I could stay on my parents' insurance and stuff for those first few years. And I was at a community college, so I was able to actually work full-time, work 40 hours a week, and go to school for 12 credits a semester, and pay for that all out of pocket, because it was at the community school, which was like the best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
And then I got my associate's degree that way. It took me 4 years to get my 2-year degree, and then I transferred to a private school to get my bachelor's, which I'm still paying for. It's been almost 10 years since I've been out of that program, and then I've got like probably 10 or 15 more on the loans right now that I'm still paying for. So if I could steer anyone, towards the community college, I don't know that I got any better of an education at the private institute than I did from the community college.
Right.
It's weird. I feel like we're told that we're failures though if we don't like get out of high school and go right to college, and we're just like indoctrinated into this way of thinking when we're the most impressionable, and it's like young kids think that there's no other path other than just like jumping into a career and a major that they really don't care about.
Right. You're like, I don't want to be a piece of garbage, so
Right.
I got to do this.
Yeah.
That's just where you.
I saw this at my high school at Essex. I saw this big poster on the wall outside the library, and it was like Dr. Seuss's "Oh, the Places You'll Go," and they had little bubbles of like places you could go after high school. It was college, workforce, and military. There were 3 options, and I'm like, is that really what we're telling kids? That there's only 3 options you can do? One was up here. One is obviously better, the college.
Mm-hmm.
The military second,
Mm-hmm.
and then workforce. Like, is that all you can do?
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know.
No, we totally like pigeonhole and like narrow that path, and we talk about flexible pathways, and we're kind of trying to figure out how we can actually enter into that and really fully embrace that. And I think a lot of times it's us people who are a little older are less willing to engage and embrace that fully, because we don't know what it's going to look like, and we're always afraid of change.
Right.
As humans, we're afraid of change, whether it's positive or negative. It's still, change is scary. Do you think that that's one of the reasons like nostalgia is such a thing, like that we always are kind of looking back? Because we tend to look back and into our own lives or just into our past, and like it's more about feelings than facts, it seems, when we're looking back like that. It's like I have this
glorify
feeling,
the past.
I mean, and think of like in our personal lives as well as our media and stuff right now. You see all these movies coming out. The new Power Rangers movie is coming out. Like
Yes.
all these things, totally just driven by nostalgia, and like all the Disney remakes, the whole Marvel universe. All their movies are totally based out of nostalgia. I've got my old school Wolverine socks on today.
Nice.
The original black and yellow and blue, coloring. Well, not even the original, because that would have been the brown and yellow. But
we're not gonna.
But we're not going to get into that.
That's a different podcast.
Don't listen to it.
But I mean, like, I have these thoughts of like movies I watched when I was a kid that was like, oh, that's such a great movie. The Never-Ending Story was so amazing. And then you go back and watch it, and by all like modern standards, it's like that movie actually was kind of not
That
great.
was I can totally see the strings, like what is going on.
It's funny, I mean, I generally watch Harry Potter once a month, but if I ever take a break from watching, like, the first 4, because after that they get kind of modern, but, like, those first couple ones are nowhere near as, like, realistically magical as I remember them being.
I think nostalgia just, it affects so much how you feel. Like, if you look back on anything, it can change, like, something from the past can, like, change how you feel in the present, which is, like, super weird. Like, just the other day, me and my friend decided we were going to go, just go for a walk through the woods, because there was this new logging trail, and we just wanted to see where it went, because we were bored, and that's what you do in backwoods Vermont.
Yeah.
when you're bored.
When you're bored, let's go for a walk.
Yeah, let's go in the woods and talk to some trees. And so we were walking up through the woods, and then we were like, all right, we're lost, naturally. And we were like, okay, oh, there's this house through the woods. We'll go through there. And we saw basically where we were neighbors as kids, and me and him just grew up there. And we had this, like, whole little ditch, basically, like this huge ditch that we had like gone down there. We'd build stuff with all of his dad's tools and stuff. Like, Zach, you were there, you remember that?
I did a couple of those.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
And we had like the shop and stuff that we built as kids there and everything. We had the ladder and stuff. We had like all of his dad's tools, making cool stuff. We'd invite the whole town over to come play in the woods and build stuff. And that logging trail went by and it destroyed it all. It's all ruined. The storm knocked over like all the trees and stuff, and it was just like really sad to see that, because that was like our entire childhood. That was like such a huge portion of it. That's like how I met my friends when I moved here.
It's true.
Stuff like that, and it was just really weird that something that's like not going to affect me anymore, because like we don't really exactly go out there and play anymore.
No.
But it still like really got to me, you know, like
Yeah.
in the way that it would if I still did play out there, you know. And it was just like, yeah, got me thinking about it.
Yeah. That's totally the same way. Like, I still have like all my old toys. I can't throw any of my toys away. There's still like bins of it, of
Oh,
all
yeah.
my Legos and stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, like in my head, I'm like, no, but what if I want to play with them again?
Yeah.
I probably won't, but
You never know.
I still need them under my bed.
Is there part of that thought too that's like, if I have kids, I want to be able to pass these on?
Yeah, pass it down.
My 4-year-old daughter, the other day, so back up a second, my wife has gotten this book out from the library and just devoured it. It was, I don't remember the full title, but I'll put it in the show notes. But basically it's on the spirituality of tidying up and like getting rid of stuff, like, you know, getting rid of all the stuff that you don't use or you don't need anymore. And she's got my daughters into it too. And my 4-year-old is like, she picked up this one shirt the other day and she's like, but this one's for when I have babies. And it's like, she's 4 and she's
You're
thinking
4.
of that. It's like, like what?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, every time I find like an old book that I used to read, I immediately am like, I want a tattoo of this.
I want a tattoo of this.
Yeah, that's what I feel every single time I see like my childhood books.
Yeah, even your shirt, right? The Beastie
Yeah.
Boys shirt.
Check your head.
I mean,
love the
I,
Beastie Boys.
Is that nostalgia?
Well, actually, when my mom was pregnant with me, she went to see the Beastie Boys in concert. So that was actually the first concert I attended.
It was the
Beastie Boys.
That's the most magical thing.
And
I've
this
ever
was
heard.
actually my dad's shirt from like forever ago, like when he was a teenager.
The Beastie
So it's so
Boys are
interesting.
great.
Is it still nostalgia if it's from before your
Yeah.
own time? Is that
That's
still a
true.
nostalgia?
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
like
I
the
think
looking
so.
back, and there's lots of people in America now that like look back at like the 1950s were this awesome, perfect time, or whatever, you know, like
Yeah,
whatever
I
time
mean,
frame that is.
I don't think that it necessarily depends on when it happened in the world, but more so like when you experienced it, because I feel like I spent a lot of my childhood listening to music that was dead before I was born. But when I
Yeah,
listen to
same.
that now, I still feel nostalgic, even though I wasn't alive during that time period.
Yeah.
Like, it still reminds me of my childhood.
Same way I
My
listen to
first
music
CD
constantly.
my dad bought me was AC/DC's Highway to Hell.
Nice.
And that's still, every time I know every word to every
Oh, yeah.
song on that CD,
Yep.
it's still, yeah, such
Way
a
to
feeling
do
of
Yeah,
nostalgia.
I was raised on Grateful Dead, so.
Yeah.
I never got into Grateful Dead until I was older. Just
Older.
like,
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
Yeah.
My dad always told me it's coming, because I'm like, yeah, Grateful Dead, and he's like, it's coming. But he's like, I went through the same thing.
Yeah.
He's like, you're going through metal, and then you're getting softer with the punk rock, and then you're gonna get into Grateful Dead, and I'm like,
well,
oh
it's
gosh.
funny because in high school I was like the same way as you, Olive. I was into Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath and Kiss. Like those
Yeah.
were the bands I was rocking out to and had the T-shirts up. I dressed up as Gene Simmons like 6 years in a row for Halloween.
That's
It just
awesome.
got better
man.
every year.
Please tell me you have
That's
a
funny.
photo
Oh
of
my
you dressed
gosh.
as Gene Simmons.
I
Oh.
could probably find one
You
somewhere.
Oh my
better
gosh.
find one. That is the most amazing thing.
We
I've
had
ever
our
heard.
school color day, like for the homecoming week, spirit week thing,
Mhm.
and our school colors were red and blue. And so that day I did like red and blue version of Gene Simmons makeup on my face just for the heck of it.
That's funny.
That's awesome.
Oh my gosh, Harold.
I remember my on random addition here. I remember back in middle school we were, it was Spirit Week and they were like dress up as someone famous and my mom was like wear this and I was like what? Who am I? And she's like you're Ryan Seacrest and I was like oh.
I remember like those spirit weeks and they'd be like 80s day
Oh,
and
yeah.
everybody would try to like dress really hard, but I would just wear like the Metallica t-shirts I was wearing all the time and they're like, Zach, you didn't dress up. I'm
Yeah,
like,
you
I
dressed the
totally
same.
did.
Yeah, like, I
mean,
just always dress.
I'm like, are you telling me nobody in the 80s wore a Metallica t-shirt and jeans?
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Were they ripped jeans?
What?
Were they ripped jeans?
No, they
See-
were not ripped jeans.
See, I had ripped jeans before it became a thing because I was always outside.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah,
That is
ripped
totally
jeans
not
were a thing
true.
maybe
No,
just
no,
before you
before
were
it-
born.
yeah.
All right, let me rephrase that. I had ripped jeans before it became a thing in my school. Like before it like.
Oh yeah, all right.
Before
Okay.
like.
Okay.
I'm telling you, because I used to go out and I was like, I
You would
just want
actually
to
rip your
dive
jeans?
around in the grass and rip my jeans. I don't know why. My
I-
mom used to scream at me for it. I would just ruin every pair of pants. I
And
ever
there's just like your knees were like green because
Yep.
you'd be rolling around on the
owned.
floor.
That's exactly what
On the
it was.
ground.
That's exactly what
I
it
was really into sewing, so all my jeans had patches, which actually I'm still into patches and sewing.
I went through a
Pretty
patchy
sweet.
phase.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the phase I'm in right now. That's my life phase.
I'm pretty sure Olivia just is nostalgia
Yeah.
as a beast.
Oh, I'm so flattered.
You're welcome.
It was interesting though, like when you were talking, I was thinking of there was an article a while ago in Psychology Today. Hal McDonald was the author, and he referenced back to someone named, I'm gonna probably butcher this name, but Svetlana Boym, who breaks nostalgia down into two different aspects, and it's basically restorative or reflective nostalgia, and she kind of puts it into like one's kind of the bad way to have nostalgia and one's the good way to kind of participate with your nostalgia. And so the restorative is like when you're looking back at that moment and then you get so caught up in it you want to like try to recreate that. So like as an adult you're like, oh man, things were just so great when I was a kid. I want to go back to like behaving like a kid again. I want to be able to do whatever I want, not have any limitations, whatever. So that's one way to like experience nostalgia, and then the other, which is I think more of what we've been talking about, is the reflective nostalgia. And basically what that is when you're looking back, and part of that feeling, part of that beauty of the nostalgia is looking back at a moment in time and just recognizing that you experienced that, and then sitting with those feelings that brings up and allowing yourselves to kind of enter into like, oh man, that was a really like good time in my life, like I enjoyed feeling that way, and then moving forward from that space of feeling those things. I mean, I think like I can look at people I graduated with now who are definitely stuck in restorative nostalgia.
Sure.
And are like still in high school.
Yeah.
At like 35 years old, and it's like, dude, what are you doing with your life? Like, that's not healthy. And even some of them, have kids and are like passing that on, and it's like you're not really able to fully invest in the here and the now because they're still stuck in that, like the bad form of nostalgia.
Right. They had something good and they want to keep it forever instead of trying to make something new that's good,
Right.
Yeah, nostalgia is something that you keep making. I think a lot of people focus on childhood nostalgia, but I think that the more you live your life, like you keep making that.
Oh,
You
sure.
keep
So,
making memories, even if they're older,
Yeah. Me and random thing actually I forgot about. Me and a couple of friends of mine yesterday just got really bored and we were like, let's play Pictionary, but we will draw memories that we've had over the summer because we were out doing the teenage woohoo, let's go party, have fun thing all this summer. So we were like, let's draw memories that we were all a part of, and whoever guesses the memory gets the point. And it was actually really fun, and it kind of made me happy. I was like, yeah, I remember that. That was so awesome. Like that was so much fun. Or like.
Was that only of the previous summer, or was it like multiple summers back?
It was multiple summers back. It just happened to be mostly that last summer because that was like our summer of like, that was like when we became so close and just were always out doing something, having fun together. you know, we were always together, and like we had so many memories. You know, like we had plenty, you know, of good memories. It was a really cool thing to do, actually.
Have you guys ever heard of Heraclitus?
No.
He's an old like philosopher guy.
Yeah.
And basically he had this river analogy. It's like you can never step into the same river twice. You know, if you walk into the same spot, it's different water. And if you follow the water to like stay with where the water is, you're in a different spot. And basically like the only constant is change. And it's kind of
That's pretty cool. That's true.
Yeah.
I think that kind of really rings true with this like sense of nostalgia, you know, and like looking back and just knowing that everything that we're learning, experiencing, you know, we can remember this in the future and grow from it and grow with it, I think also.
Right. And on the topic of old school nostalgia and kids and stuff, Zach, why don't you kick us off with your thoughts on kids these days, being a man amongst children yourself?
Man amongst children. My thoughts, I don't have a problem with kids these days. I don't have a problem with kids these days. I have a problem with people who say kids these days. Because I feel like it's such an easy thing to say. It's such a shorthand to be like,
cringe.
oh my gosh, kids these days have iPhones. 10-year-olds have iPhones. Can you imagine that? And I'm like, yeah, I can. That's totally normal and totally fine. Because when I was 10, people were like, oh my gosh, kids these days have Game Boys.
Yeah,
can you imagine? They're not going to go outside. They're just playing with their Game Boys.
Yeah,
and then it was like, oh my gosh, they have color TV.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're all
And
talking
it was
about.
like hate from jealousy. But the thing is, I see where you're coming from, and I totally agree with that. But the part I disagree with is not, like, that totally makes sense. Like, yeah, they have iPhones. It was the same way when we got Game Boys. It was the same way when the Super Nintendo
When I had
and
my
the
Sega
NES came
Genesis.
back.
Sega Genesis, yeah.
Sega Genesis? That, I love
Although
that.
I couldn't walk around playing that.
Yeah. I loved that failed console, alright? It was pretty good.
We didn't have exposure to the internet back young.
Mm.
And
Outside
I don't
of like a
think...
library
Is that a
computer.
problem? Or
Well,
is that a good thing?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I think it's got the ability to be good and bad, but I've seen so many kids that are part of this schooling, you know, that they just all seem to affect each other, and sometimes it is negative with their phones, you know, like it's not that the phones are bad, but like I've seen
How
young
they interact with the
kids
technology.
interact with each other and that technology, like in like horrible ways that like it worries me about their development, you know, like how they're gonna grow up after that. Because like, yeah, of course, when I was a kid, when I thought swearing was the coolest thing in the world for a little bit.
It is
Of course.
It's
the
so
best thing. It is so good.
I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. But that's not the part I'm worried about. Is like kids these days are, as I say, kids these days.
Kids these days.
I see so many of them just like go leagues above anything I've ever seen before, and like just things that I find like horrible, and you can always make that argument like, you know, they're just kids, they'll grow out of it, like they'll realize they need to mature, but they need to find. What if they don't find that role model? You know, what if they stick amongst their peers, you know, and they just stick together and they stay with that, like, those horrible actions and words and stuff, instead of finding a role model that they can be like, I want to be an adult and mature and I want to do that, you know?
And are they missing out on a key part of, like, social development?
Right.
Through that. I mean, like, you know, back when I was a kid, here's walk to school uphill both ways, barefoot and all that.
Yeah.
But cell phones were just coming out. I never had a cell phone until I was like 18. You know, like, and no one in my school had cell phones. You know, if they did, it would have been a big honking thing that weighed like 3 pounds or whatever. At that
and you
point.
wore the backpack.
Yeah.
And you were on a sailboat and you were calling
like
people.
texting, all that stuff wasn't a thing. You called somebody on their landline. So you called a place, not a person. So you had to, like, if you're calling the girl that you're attracted to, you had to take the risk of talking to her dad.
Yep.
Or, you know, mom, whatever. You know, you had these social skills that you had to build. Like, I might call and have to have that awkward conversation with Susie's father before I get to talk to Susie. Like,
Totally. Yeah.
So we can look back and think, like, is that something that we're missing out on? Is that part of a skill development? Like,
Well,
because it's different than
it is different.
with cell phones and stuff than with Game Boys and things. I would say there is a difference in that technology and the way it connects us.
That's true. And I think that differences are okay because the world's always going to be changing, and it's important for us and our children to be able to like adapt to it. But
I think there's different skills that they're gaining, and there's
for sure.
so much value in having an iPhone and having these smartphones.
They can gain so much.
So much. I mean, that kid who just keeps asking you, the parents, questions and questions.
Yeah.
Just imagine him talking into Siri
Yeah.
and getting every answer he ever wanted.
Yeah.
Like, that's so valuable.
Although my daughters love to play with Siri, but she doesn't understand them half the time because they talk a little bit differently.
Yeah, they talk a little
Go on, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, there are those skills that you had to talk to their father. I mean, I've definitely gained like texting skills.
Right.
You know, like how to text better
That's true.
without being face to face and being like emotionless. How to, express my emotion in language.
Does it include emojis?
Oh, of course, emojis and punctuation are very important.
Yeah, well,
I think the internet is knowledge, and like knowledge is power, but also I think that there is a lot of unwanted exposure that kids who are like developmentally just too young to be experiencing. I think like the first couple times that I was really like shocked on the internet or something that really bothered me, I was already probably like 15 or 16, and I remember, it kind of like curving me right then, but I think that if I had experienced that when I was so young, it would have been completely different.
My father told me something, and I want to know if he's onto something or if this is totally off. He was telling me, I was talking to him about a transgendered student in our class, and he was so blown away that these like LGBT were coming out in high school, and he was like, that was never a thing when he was in high school. There's people you thought were gay, and you didn't talk about that. And he was like, is it because of the internet and that you just exposure of this huge LGBT community or whatever things you identify with is out there, and you have knowledge and you can figure that out, that kids with all their teenage angst and trying to find that they're just going to grab onto something that they maybe not fully into. You know what can you guys see what I'm coming from?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's a questionable thing. Like, there's not really a way to know because you can't get it inside the minds of those children. As much they can say all these things, and stuff, but how much do they really like?
I don't think it's anybody's place to question.
Yeah,
when children say things like that, though.
Well, I don't think that question whether they are or not, but like, did the exposure to internet affect that? Is that
I think the internet
why
created
they're more comfortable?
Yeah, I think the internet created safe spaces for and kind of just like showed kids showed kids that like a community is okay,
right.
And like gave people a place to feel safe when they couldn't, like in school, and the more people who were experiencing that, like the more school became kind of similar to that, but I don't think that makes it less valid at all.
Well, no, that would make it less valid.
I guess we could flip it differently. Instead of these kids gaining on something they don't believe in, that the older generation that was less tolerant, weren't exposed and couldn't grab on to something they really believe in.
And the thing is like, how many, in a small school like this or something, how many of these teenagers and stuff that like are gonna find someone or like know anybody in this small school that like has any idea what they're feeling or what they're talking about? That's where the internet is helpful in that way. They can find more people that have some idea what they're going through. Because maybe there is, but like in small schools, sometimes it's hard to find somebody that really knows what's going on.
And we're also in a nice bubble up here in Vermont.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, like, when your dad was in school, you'd probably be a lot more apt to be like beaten and potentially even killed if you came out with something like that.
Yeah.
In like Vermont, you're not going to see that a whole lot.
Yeah,
Other parts of the country might still be kind of stuck in that
Right.
area too. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like, you know, down in the Bible Belt and everything. Like,
I
I
know.
feel like Vermont's just a really relaxed state. Not to toot our own horn or anything, but we seem.
We definitely
For the
do
most part.
have our set of problems, though.
Oh,
but I
yeah.
guess
Oh, yeah.
social issues
I'm not
we're
saying
pretty
we're
good
perfect.
at. Aren't we the drug capital of the USA?
Are we?
Something like that. We've
one
got.
of
Is
them.
that true?
Well, yeah.
I think heroin and prescription pills. I think we're one of the biggest
Oh yeah.
up in Vermont.
Interesting.
And
I'll put a link to
close
this.
to Canada and stuff. Yeah.
I'll
yeah.
put a link to this History Channel video of just why it is because we got drugs coming up from these Boston and New York, these big cities, and then coming down from Canada, and we're right in the middle of these two big highways coming up and down, and the gross age is really high. Like we have a big population of elderly people, so the prescription pills are out there
Right.
because we have so much. I'll put a link to the video. It was really
That'd
interesting.
be awesome.
Yeah. See, I was watching on CNN the other day. Like, not to steer us too far away from our topic or anything, but I found out something horrible that, like, I'm sure all of you have heard about, like, all the crazy overdoses that have been happening because not only are people, like, naturally ODing, but, well, not naturally, but also, you know, drug makers and stuff are putting things into these drugs that shouldn't be there.
Lacing
They're
it and
very
stuff,
dangerous,
yeah.
lacing it, making it cheaper to make and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like, you know, people trying to make money, like, it's garbage. But then, on the news, this guy came on who's a former heroin addict himself, and now helps people, and, like, he's a counselor and stuff, and he tries to help people with it. He said that when he, not too long ago, he was addicted to heroin and stuff, when he found out that somebody, like, when anyone in the community, people that did heroin, found out that somebody had, like, died from an overdose, they would go out and try to find that heroin on purpose because they thought it was, like, the strongest stuff. They wanted
Wow.
it, like, that.
Yeah.
So, like, the dealers that were, like, making this, or the makers that were making this stuff and, like, making it poorly and, like, causing people's deaths and stuff, were actually not harmed by it all, because normally, you know, what happens when something on the shelves at a store is, like,
If
dangerous.
you go and eat at McDonald's and you die.
Yeah, exactly. McDonald's is in a lot of trouble, but in this case, you got more praise for it, so it just
Wow.
fuels it even more. It was horrible.
That's crazy.
Horrible. I remember.
We should talk about more of that stuff in another podcast.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah,
that
we
could be
should
a
definitely
really
do a
interesting
drug one.
topic. I did want to bring us back to one other thing when we were kind of talking about the cell phones and the kids and
Yeah.
stuff. And,
Yeah, it's something I wanted to mention too.
we're running out of time, but really quickly, there's a thing called intimate anonymity that kind of comes along with that, and those online conversations where you have your screen names and stuff, and people might not know exactly who you are, and even if they do, it gets easier to, like, for me to say something scathing to you online than it is in person, because I don't have to worry about you punching me in the face or something if I say something nasty to you, over the internet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and you're pretty much protected there too. I remember we were talking about this in senior social studies.
Yeah, go on.
Well, you're pretty much protected. There was people on Facebook, they would just say horrible things, like just directly to family members of, like, someone who had, like, passed away even, and just like horrible things that you would never say, and anyone in your right mind says you should get in trouble for that, like you should not
Yeah.
be able to
Yeah.
do that. But they take it to court and they are completely protected. There's nothing they can do about
There's a lot to the comment. Don't read the comments.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's got good freedom of speech has goods and bads, It's if you have any sort of law like that, there's always going to be bad eggs,
Do you think that something like that kind of influences how, kids or people in general, even nowadays, because you see it in adults too, it's not just kids that do it, and how we interact with each other.
Oh yeah.
If we wanted to tackle a little bit of the big B word, bullying, and that looks a lot different nowadays than when I was in school.
Yeah. Bullying was, I'm sure, of course I wasn't really around in high school then, but from what I heard, a lot more physical back then.
Yeah, again,
than it
you
is
don't.
now.
We didn't have the means to really contact each other outside of school all the time. Nowadays, with the internet, it's 24 hours a day. If you can't get away from that individual that's pestering you,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's not just at the school, and it's not just as simple as, oh, go across the street into the parking lot and take care of business or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember even when I was in elementary school watching, we had like assemblies every year, and there were puppet shows about bullying, and it was always just like very, very like generic bully who would like pin you up against a brick wall, you know?
Yeah, everybody thinks of those like high school
But
movies.
that was only my elementary school experience, you know? It
Yeah.
wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, because the teachers grew up in the school
Yeah,
with those
that's true.
bullies.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, we got to stop this. And then by the time they got all these programs out, it changed into
Yeah, now we
cyberbullying.
have
Now there's a bunch of
neo-Nazis.
programs and all
Right.
that stuff, but
On the internet.
Right, and people always say, like, oh, if you're getting cyberbullied, like, block them and stuff too, but, like, you can do that, and that's a great thing to do, but at the same time, what's to stop them from going on Facebook and, like, posting something about you to where everyone can see it?
and
That
then
doesn't-
other people tag on and come
Yeah.
at you that
Exactly.
you then need to block or whatever.
Exactly, and it's not just, as simple as that always.
Yeah,
That is a helpful thing to do, and you probably should do that in most cases, but, you can't still just prevent it entirely from that.
if you block them, are you going to get ridiculed because you blocked him? All this, this
Right.
blocked me, it could keep going, it keeps spiraling. And these, the victims getting in their own heads about what they can do.
And on the internet, there's, go tell a teacher. Teacher can't do much about the internet. No, there's not much anyone can do anything about the internet. That's the scary part about it. But it is, I'm not saying the internet's all bad. It's admittedly useful.
And like you said before,
Infinite
it's
ways.
a neutral
Yeah.
piece of technology.
It's
It's
how
how
you
we
use
use it and how it interacts with our humanity.
Right.
Man, what a conversation, you guys.
Yeah,
That was
I feel
good. We hit
we still have
everything, I think.
lots of
Yeah.
conversation to have from this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have less time to have it in today.
Yeah.
See, I wanted to bring up one thing real quick that everyone's gonna scold at me for.
Yeah.
But it actually is meaningful, so in a weird way. So it was bound to
Bracing
happen
myself for
eventually.
whatever that
It was
is.
bound to happen eventually.
Brace yourself.
But I know
Tyler is coming.
this is the only way that normally when something like the internet like changes your brain and stuff, as like a kid, you don't really see that because you're just always been that way. Like, but I know a way. I can see a way how the internet has just like affected me like in a really weird way, like my brain entirely, and that's with humor. Sounds weird, like, but we're bound to bring up memes eventually. All right.
Oh yeah, absurdist memes.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
yeah.
But here's
Awful.
the thing. You can show me the world's greatest comedian, the best well thought out joke. He spends all night writing these jokes and stuff. I'm like, haha, that's funny. But like,
I
I'll
still
go on
laugh
the
at
internet.
suck with 2 C's.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'll go on the internet and like they have these vines with like these bass explosion vines or whatever.
Oh my
Vines
god,
are
those
dead.
are the best.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah,
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Vine.
We miss you. And it gets me every time. Like,
It's
it'll
so
just
funny.
be like something stupid, like a kid show, like SpongeBob, and then all of a sudden they'll like do something weird, and like the bass will just go like crazy heavy and stuff like. And it makes me laugh every single time, and it's just noise. And if you said, "Hey Tyler, why is that funny?" I'd be like, "You got me. I had no idea what."
I don't know. It's just everywhere on an app
Yeah.
called iFunny.
Yeah.
So it's gotta
The
be.
internet programs
Who
me to
uses
find these
iFunny
things
anymore?
funny. I do
Oh,
every day.
Really?
Yes, every single day of my life.
Memes are everywhere. Why would you still look at iFunny?
Because iFunny is just memes. I can stay away from, well, mostly just memes. I shouldn't say that. There's always the occasional got kick, But
Anime.
yeah, oh god.
we could have a whole conversation.
All I'm saying, Genji's OP, dude. But no,
Can we leave?
I hate it.
Yeah, I think there's one thing left to say.
What?
Zing!
Zing.
Yeah, didn't do that.
That'd be a teacher.